Welcome to Crafty Beach. This is Julie, and I have some amazing patriotic projects for you today. But if you haven't subscribed yet, I would really appreciate it, and a thumbs up is always appreciated. Let's get to it. Okay, today we are going to make patriotic decorations using items from the Dollar Tree. So I found these stars at my Dollar Tree, and they are covered in this white tinsel-y foil kind of stuff, and they look kind of cheap. So I got white ones because I was thinking I could probably do something with that. So I am trying every green paint I own here to try to find a good color. I want to do a topiary effect on them if possible. So I plan to attach some moss, but I'm going to need them to be green first. So all my greens were too light, even mixing them together. So I just added some black and darkened the shade of green. And this got me a really good plant color. And I am just going in with my foam brush. And I kind of had to really push into it to get all the white covered. So I did the front, and I'm going to do the same thing here on the back. And since it's like a spongy brush, when you push down on it, you're going to get more paint out. And it did take a lot of paint, like every bit of paint that I mixed here, just on this first star. And I'm just going over all the sides now. I want it to be covered all over. And I don't want any of the white showing. I had 3 of these stars, and my first attempt was to take the tinsel off and try to remake it with wrapping it in rope. That did not go well. And I'm going to do the same thing with the second one. So we have 2 green topiary stars, I guess you'd call them. And I'm giving them a dry with my heat gun. The kind of material they're made out of and how much glue, how much paint I had to use made them kind of hard to dry. But now I'm just going to go over and I'm just going to do this on the front. I'm going to take this moss from the Dollar Tree and hot glue, and I'm just going to start kind of gluing it all over. And it took a lot of hot glue. And just wherever I see any of the green paint poking through, I am going to glue some there. I kind of liked it without the moss, but it reminded me of Christmas, cheap Christmas tree, garland or something like that. And I thought this would make it look a little bit more high-end. So you're also going to be able to see the sides. So I'm just going in with the hot glue and the moss, and I am attaching that to the sides too. Be careful, do not burn yourself. I only had a couple protectors on my fingers, so of course I did a couple times. I love this hot glue gun, but oh man, that glue is hot. And I am just kind of going all over, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a haircut to give it back that star shape. I don't want it to look all crazy. And the back I'm just going to leave green because you're probably not even going to be able to see it. So just shaping it up the best I can. And there is some areas where you can see the green through, but overall, I think I did a pretty good job. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing with star number 2. And there we have them. But then I thought, I think they need something else. So I have these little wood stars that I got at, I think, Dollar General, but you can probably get them at Dollar Tree too. I got a whole package really cheap. And I'm going to go in with this antique wax by Waverly that I get at Walmart. And I'm just going to give one thin coat to bring out the wood in that star and make it look, you know, kind of farmhousey. And you can see the sides, so I'm just going back in and trying to paint the sides as well. And that's what I plan on doing with that, is just attaching that to the front of my topiary. I think that's going to give it like a whole nother texture, a whole nother vibe. And I really like how these turned out. So again, one coat of the Waverly Antique Wax on the second star. And all I'm going to have to do now is give them a dry and then attach those to the topiary stars. To do that, I'm just going to use hot glue, like a whole bunch of hot glue, and hold that down for a few minutes until that sticks. And that's all there is to it. That is our first project. And I'm just giving it a dry to make sure that the stars are completely dry before I move them. Okay, the next project, I'm going to use one of these little wood pennant signs from the Dollar Tree and one of these adorable little patriotic gnomes. It is covered in glitter and like little stones on the surface, but I want to use that wood there on the top. So I tried to sand off all the glitter and made like a huge mess, and then I just gave up because I'm like, I am not going to be able to paint over the texture on here without it showing through. So I just taped off the wood on the top, and I went in and printed out some shiplap just on cardstock, because that's kind of how I planned on painting it. But this was my plan B. My paper is not quite as big as the wood pennant, and so you can see the tips there at the end, but I think that will be okay. I think we can make it work. I cannot cut a straight line, but the cutter does help. So I am just trimming that to size, and my plan is just to use this Mod Podge. This is just matte Mod Podge, and glue the cardstock onto the front of the wood pennant sign. I don't normally like Dollar Tree signs because they're really thin, but I will probably use this like as a hanging, like on the front of a wreath. That should really work well for that. So I'm just using my rotary cutter here and cutting off the excess cardstock. And you could always use like, you know, scrapbook paper. You could paint over it, but I don't know. It was just too much sanding and probably too much paint. And so I have my shiplap image on the front of my pennant sign, but it's too brown, and so I'm going to go over it here with Ivory Chalk Paint by Waverly and just start adding some of the ivory color to try to brighten it up some. I don't really want it to look brown. And then I am going over here with another coat of Mod Podge to help seal the paper onto the sign. And then I'm just using a little bit of spackle from the Dollar Tree and trying to fill in the little corners there at the end where there is no paper, so that, you know, you won't be able to really see that like ridge there, height difference. And I'm going back in with some more Mod Podge and giving that another seal over the paper and the paint and the spackling. And then I'm just going to go in with my heat gun and start this on the drying process. And the reason I taped off the top there is because I want to be able to do something with the wood up there, which is why I didn't really use the back of the sign. It probably would have been easier to use the back of the sign because I would have been able to paint it on a smooth surface. I hate the glitter on these signs. I don't know why Dollar Tree insists on using them. And now I'm just going over it with my little sanding block from the Dollar Tree and kind of trying to get the excess paper off the sides, distressing it a little bit. And I'm like, it is still too dark. So I'm just going over it with some more of the ivory chalk paint and a baby wipe and just kind of smoothing that through. But I kind of covered up some of my shiplap lines, so I'm just going in there with a ruler and a Sharpie and trying to fix that. I'm like, I want this to look like, you know, like a weathered white wood, not brown. So I ended up pretty much painting the whole thing anyway, but the paper did cover up all that texture that was on the sign. It wasn't just the glitter. There were like these little like fake stones that really kind of stood up a little bit too. And just giving that a quick sand with my sanding block, and I'm going to go over it with another coat of the Mod Podge. I really want this to be like sealed on there well and cohesive with all of the paint and everything that I've added to it. And then I'm just giving it a dry with my heat gun. And my plan is to attach this little metal gnome that I got at the Dollar Tree to the front of it. I think that'll work well. And again, I covered up some of the shiplap lines. So I'm just going in with a Sharpie and a ruler and fixing those because I really do want those as part of the sign. I think it gives it more of the, you know, the rustic farmhouse vibe that I'm going for with these decorations. And here I am adding more ivory. I just couldn't get it bright enough. I guess the image that I used originally was like too brown. I didn't really notice it at the time. But I just keep adding ivory until I get it the way I like it. And then I'm just going to take the tape off of the top where the wood is and the twine. And I want that to be like a darker color like what I did on previous projects. So I'm using the Antique Wax by Waverly and just giving it a thin one coat to kind of change the color of the wood on the top of the sign. I think that'll go more with the farmhouse vibe of this decoration. And gonna give that a quick dry. And I was able to just leave the twine on there, and that covered great with the antique wax. And then I'm making sure that all that Mod Podge and paint that I used on my pennant sign is dry. So next step is to take my lawn stake from the Dollar Tree with this gnome on it. And actually the little stake just came right off with my hand. It has these little tabs. I'm gonna try to like bend them down to see if I can hide them behind his feet. And he is the perfect size for the sign. I kind of wanted to add like a word with like Scrabble tiles, but there really wasn't enough height to the sign. He pretty much fills the whole sign up, so keep it simple. It's just going to be the gnome for me. And so I am getting ready to attach him to the sign with some hot glue, and then I realized those tabs were making him not sit flush with the sign with the sign. So I'm just using my floral scissors from the Dollar Tree, cutting off those little metal tabs, and then using some pliers to get every little bit of the like sharp metal off the ends of his feet. I don't want it to be sharp and then kind of bending his feet back into place. And he's a pretty flat little gnome, so I think I can attach him to the surface of the sign without much trouble. And here I am searching for some super glue in my glue bin, and I have a ton of glue in there, but I was having trouble finding what I needed. So this is just the super glue from the Dollar Tree, and I'm gonna coat that on there, and then also I'm using hot glue. The super glue will give it a long-term hold, and the hot glue will glue it on there right away. I'm using one of these little silicone things I got. I think it was from like the beauty department at Dollar Tree to protect my fingers as I push them down because that hot glue made that metal sign hot. and it looks good. He is attached to my little pennant sign. And then, of course, I'm thinking he needs a little distress. So I'm just going over him with like a dry brush with that ivory chalk paint and just giving him just a little country. Just so he'll go more with the rustic look of the sign. Okay, the next step is this grateful sign that I got at the Dollar Tree. Kind of reminds me of like an envelope box. It's got little white stars along the sides, and then it has this little gray star on top that says grateful. And I picked this up from the Dollar Tree just in their like home decor section. And I am going to go in and paint that star with this crimson chalk paint by Waverly. And in hindsight, I think I should have painted it white first because the white writing on there was really, really hard to cover with the red paint. So I'm just going in there with my first coat of the red, and I'm just kind of sanding the front there where I tore that sign and going in with coat number 2 of red paint on the star. And then I decide I like the sides with the little stars and the wood, but I want to brighten up the front of the sign. So I'm going to go in with this ivory chalk paint by Waverly and give a good coat just to the front of the sign. And I think I need another coat of red paint. Like I said, it was really hard to cover that. And then I'm just going in with a smaller brush on the sign, filling in the little grooves and giving that another coat of the ivory chalk paint as well. And another coat of red paint on that star. See what I'm saying? You could see the word just popping through, and I really didn't want that. I really wanted it to be solid. Then I'm going to go in and distress my sign with some of this antique wax by Waverly and just give it more of a farmhouse weathered vibe. And it was a little too dark, so I'm just going back in with a little bit more of the ivory chalk paint and kind of messing with it until I get it like exactly the way I like. And another coat of red paint on that star. You see what I'm saying? I think if I painted it white first, it would have erased that white word, and then it would have been like maybe 1 or 2 coats. Red paint, can be a pain. So I'm going to remove that tape along the sides, and it's got the little cute star pattern on the sides, and I think that really goes well with what I'm going for here. And making sure my little red star is dry, and then I'm just going to attach it back to the sign with hot glue. And then I am going to use my Cricut to make a word for the star, and I'm going to use this Cricut vinyl from the Dollar Tree. It actually works really well. Only one of my Dollar Trees is carrying it, and they are selling out like almost immediately, but $1 for a roll of vinyl, I mean, that's like, you can't get better than that. So I am just going in and cutting out a word. I really like the Rae Dunn font. I have a lot of that in my house, and so that is what I'm going to use for the word on this little star sign. And I actually printed out 2 words because I was thinking while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and print out like the word I want for my next project. So I'm just weeding that vinyl. It's kind of hard to see with the white on white for sure. But this vinyl actually works really well. I'm quite impressed. And I don't like the transfer tape though. So I'm using the paper transfer tape that I have here and attaching that with my little scraper, and then I'm just going to cut apart this 2 separate words and set that aside. And so I just have this saying USA in it's called the skinny font, and I'm just going to attach that to my red star that I painted 1,000,000 times. So I'm just going to tear away the extra vinyl so I can kind of see what I'm doing and line it up. And I measured, but I don't know, it was a little bit too big, but it was close enough. I went for it. And I'm just going to scrape that down, make sure my vinyl is stuck to my sign. And there we are. A nice Farmhouse USA sign. And I love how this turned out. So cute. Okay, this is the next project I have. It says Shoot for the Stars. It's just like a little metal sign that I got at the Dollar Tree with this blue star on the front. And then I liked the color of the blue star. It goes with my decor. So I'm like, I wonder if I can get the paint off the front of it with this fingernail polish remover. And actually, I was quite surprised to see that it did work, but it also started taking the blue paint off too. So I kind of had to stop at that point, and then I'm just giving it a quick sand with my sanding block, and it's almost the same color as this agave chalk paint I have by Waverly. And so I'm just going to go in and carefully paint over that to cover up any of the words, trying not to get any on the metal sign. It's like raised up above the sign, so it was fairly easy to paint it without making a mess. And it is a quick dry with my heat gun. I love how fast chalk paint dries, and it adheres to like everything. It's like totally my favorite paint. And then I'm just going to go over it here with a second coat to make sure it has good coverage. And my original plan was to do this like in more of a flag blue, but I've used this color of blue on several of my nautical projects, and I really like how it turned out. So I'm like, I'm just going to go for it. And giving it a second dry here to make sure it's good and dry, and you could still kind of see the letters. So I'm just giving it a third coat, but just in the middle there where the words are, to make sure that those don't peek out. And then you know your girl has to distress it. So ivory chalk paint and a dry brush. And I'm just going to kind of give it a very light distressing to break up the like solid blue. It looked a little too plain, and give it a little bit of character. Kind of around the edges, just a tiny, tiny bit of that ivory chalk paint. And here is the word that I cut out with my Cricut. And it's simple. It's just 1776. I thought that would be cute and simple. And I am just tearing off the extra transfer tape so I can line it up properly. And I measured this one right. And that's it. I'm going to leave it like that. I'm just going back in and giving it a little bit more distressing with that dry brush with the ivory chalk paint. And we're done. Okay, this next project, I'm going to use this garden flag that I got at the Dollar Tree. And it's got gnomes on it, land of the free. Isn't that cute? And I'm like, I think I can do something with this. So I'm just taking the string off, and there was a little plastic bar in there. And I got this little hanger at the Target Dollar Spot the other day, and I think it was $3. And it comes apart like that. I was really wondering how it worked. There's these like little like brass clips, and then a piece of wood to hold it in place. And so I'm just kind of learning how this thing works. And I'm like, I thought that this would be the perfect size for a garden flag and a way to use a garden flag inside as a decoration. So, of course, I don't like that natural wood. So I'm going to go in and do something about that with this Antique Wax by Waverly. And one coat is all it's going to take to bring out that beautiful wood grain. And I'm kind of going over the edges, but they were not really very much of a wood, so they didn't really need much. And so I'm going to take apart the bottom and do the same thing. I'm not going to worry about the other wood sides, the ones with the clips, because they won't be seen, so it doesn't matter. And I really kind of wanted to paint the brass clips, but I didn't know how well that would hold up, so I kind of just left them as they were, and it's okay. Okay, such a simple project. And I might get more of these little hangers. They're actually pretty cool. So it just uses a little pressure to secure that in there with the wood. It works better if you put the material in there first. The flag is what I'm using. And sliding in that piece of wood, making sure it's all lined up and that everything's straight. But, you know, my flag was wrinkled from being in that package, and I really didn't know if that was going to come out, like with the hanging, with the weight of the bottom. So I'm just going to go in with my Easy Press mat. My Easy Press is sitting right here, and I'm just going to give it an iron. I was a little worried that it was going to melt because the sign's kind of like a thin plasticky feeling. So I'm just going to use some wax paper from the Dollar Tree to try to make sure that it don't melt the fabric, but I'm just giving it an all over iron, and you can use an iron. And I'm so glad I did this because it totally made it straight, and the wrinkles would have probably driven me crazy. But this garden flag is so cute. I can't get over how cute it is. And so I'm just attaching the bottom ones the same way as the top. Put the flag in there and then snap the front on. Now they have little hangers on the back, but they're kind of like for screws, like big screws to slide over. And this is such a lightweight sign that I didn't want to put big screws in the wall. So I'm just going to use some twine and make a quick hanger. And I'm just actually going to go in through the little clamps here and string it through. And then just kind of figure out how long of a handle I want. Just cut the twine and just tie it in a knot. And I'm glad I chose to attach it to the wall this way. I think it turned out really good. And then I don't really want that knot to be exposed. I'm just going to tuck it under one of the clamps. And we have a hanger. Okay, here's our final products. Here is our little topiary stars with the wood stars attached to the front. I think they turned out really cute. What do you guys think? Love that. And here is our gnome pennant sign. He looks very rustic. He looks very farmhouse. And I don't really like, that the sign is super thin, but it does lay straight. It's not super obvious, but I'm probably just going to attach that to the front of a wreath. I think that'll be cute. And here is our little envelope box with the USA in the skinny font. And the little stars are on the sides of that. And I think that turned out really cute too. And our 1776, our little metal sign. I like to hang these on knobs of furniture. I think it gives a cute little decorative touch. So this is it on my entryway table. And land of the free, here is our gnome garden flag that we turned into a wall hanging using these little hangers from the dollar spot at Target. And I have that right by my front door, and I think it looks really cute. Okay, guys, please like and subscribe, and everyone have a great day.